I'm Rami Jubran, Chief of Staff at Drinks, and this is the Drinks Podcast, the business of online alcohol. The alcohol business is at an inflection point. The way people discover brands, how they research what to buy, where they actually make purchases, it's all shifting. A lot of traditional approaches just aren't working the way they used to. Every episode, I'll talk with founders, operators, and executives who are figuring this out in real time. Some are finding real success with new strategies, others are learning expensive lessons. But they're all navigating the same fundamental challenge. How do you build a sustainable alcohol business in a digital world? Whether you're running a winery exploring e-commerce, looking to add alcohol as a new category at a retailer, or building technology for regulated industries, these conversations will hopefully give you the context you need to understand where this industry is heading. Today's guest has cracked something most premium spirits brands struggle with: how to grow DTC without alienating retail partners. Jeff Mahony is CEO of NEFT Vodka, an ultra-premium vodka distilled in Austria with a distinctive feature. It comes in a lightweight, recyclable barrel designed for portability and sustainability. Under Jeff's leadership, NEFT recorded triple-digit percentage growth in e-commerce while simultaneously expanding retail presence through Kroger, Total Wine, Bevmo, and others. The brand is now available in 17 countries and has built partnerships with the Visa Cash App Racing Bulls, Formula One team, and Formula Drift. What makes Jeff's approach noteworthy is the clarity. 2 ingredients: non-GMO rye and alpine spring water, straightforward positioning, and a distribution strategy that makes DTC and retail work together rather than compete. His background in technology and finance gives him a different lens on digital transformation than most spirits executives. Today, we're exploring how packaging innovation drives e-commerce, why simplicity wins in a crowded vodka market, and how to build digital channels without burning retail relationships. Jeff, thank you for joining us. You've achieved triple-digit e-commerce growth with NEFT while expanding those retail partnerships. Most brands struggle with one or the other. How did you approach this challenge from the start, and really, how did you manage it? I feel like I jump into inventory and I go, I don't know how you have the inventory to keep everyone happy at all those times.
Well, you said it right there, right? First, you have to be able to actually keep and manage capacity. So you don't want to, if you will, throttle back your sales teams in either of those channels. So you need to make sure that you have capacity. We do that by having our own distilleries. So we have a distillery in Golling, Austria. We have another one called Freuhof up there that we use. We have one that we're standing up in Hungary, another that we're standing up in the Arizona area as well. So we're constantly managing our capacity requirements to make sure that we can deal with both channels effectively. I simply can't have a moment in time where we're out of market. I don't believe that you can be in market, out of market, and then come back to market. So
No, you get off that shelf, you're not getting that shelf back.
you're not getting that shelf space back like ever. At least not in any reasonable time frame. So capacity was number one. Number two is the emotional connection, right? You have to create an emotional connection with your consumers. You also have to create an emotional connection with those that are selling your product, right? So in the spirit space, it's a misnomer that suppliers are actually selling. We're not. We're really referring. We have to refer to distributor relationships that we have. Most states and countries have some form of a 3-tier program. So you're really selling to those channel consultants and those folks that are experts in the space, those folks that are selling into the retail locations, and those folks that are selling direct to consumer. So we're really focused on the emotional story that they can retell on our. So we have marketing programs that are telling the consumers our emotional story. But then we also have programs that are telling the retailers how to tell our emotional story. Those retailers, obviously, as part of the consumer channel, will in turn tell that when they're on the floor. Tastings and other things sort of keep you on par. But you have to figure out a way to make sure both those channels coexist with each other, create channel conflict. So we take this very seriously, this understanding that we don't want to upset our retailers when we're going direct to consumer through online sales. So typically what we're doing is we're creating a slightly different price point. It's actually more advantageous for you to go to a retailer to buy our product. You pay a small premium, but something that's noticeable by the retailer when you go direct online, for example. Having said that, the convenience factor is really what you're sort of paying for online. So Channel conflict is a big deal for us. It's a big deal, I think, for most companies. Understanding how to alleviate channel conflict typically comes with just price differentials. So you're playing this balanced game of I want the same price for our product across as many channels as I can create. It creates consistency for our consumers. Having said that, there has to be some differentiation, or the retailers will see this as channel conflict,
Mm-hmm.
and you will be challenged every time you have a conversation with them, because the first thing that they'll be
Mm-hmm.
talking about is, what are you doing online? How come we're not a part of that? Why are you bastardizing our business?
Mm-hmm.
So being cognizant of that is really the material part of managing both of those channels.
Where did you see success first, e-commerce or in retail?
Well, we saw it in both places because we attacked both simultaneously. So one of the challenges that we had to overcome, as we believe it, is being data driven. And we get the clearest indications of cost of acquisition and other statistical information from our online sales. So online, we can do a call to action. We can do an awareness campaign. We can do an engagement campaign. And we can see results almost immediately in our online solutions.
Mm-hmm.
We can then translate those into the retail. We can make certain assumptions. The feedback that you get from retailers is very slow, sometimes errored. You
Mm-hmm.
get misinformation, not on purpose. It's just the way that things are happening in that channel. So you need some place where you can get a very real understanding of what the market is telling you they want. Then you translate that to the retailer. When the retailer starts to see, in our case, the barrels moving off the shelf, then they wholeheartedly embrace what you've been telling them. But what we're telling them has to come from some statistical analysis. Unfortunately, we can only get true numbers from our online sales. So we
Mm-hmm.
attack both channels simultaneously.
When you're looking at the data from your online sales, what are you finding is the most impactful in turning that data into more sales?
Interesting. So we need the repeat, right? So we understand that for us, we're in vodka. The annual value of a vodka drinker is about 450 USD per year. That number is important because it gives us what a cap is on what anybody's willing to spend on vodka. Now, that would make the assumption that we control 100% of their vodka purchases. We don't. So the information that we get is used to try to create repeat sales. What's the best way to create a repeat sale? Are we actually seeing a second purchase in a timely frame? Because if they're purchasing $450 worth of vodka per year, it's a fairly frequent purchase that they're making.
Mm-hmm.
So if we're not seeing a fairly frequent repeat, then we have to shift our approach. So for us, it's just A/B testing. So we run our own media unit. We can produce somewhere around 400 units a week of various mediums that are tested by our digital teams in an A/B testing format. And we see which ones are producing a lower cost of acquisition online. We're seeing which ones are creating a repeat buy. And we're just data driven. There's no guesswork in it. We're trying to move away from the subject matter experts that, quote, know exactly what the market needs.
Mm-hmm.
I've been in business for 35 years doing this kind of thing. I've never met anybody who's guessed what the market needs. I just haven't. But you can get
Mm-hmm.
close enough where you can do meaningful A/B testing.
When you think about data, there's so much of it. And one of the things I've struggled with in my career the whole time has been everybody always wants to see so much data. And I always go, well, it's not the breadth of the data, it's what's actionable within the data, right? Like I would rather have 3 data points that are very easy for us to talk about, interpret, and do something about than 100 data points. And I think especially with one of the things that we push a lot on people is, or we talk about a lot is, it's important to own your data. It's important to have your data. It's important to understand your data. But at the end of the day, like I don't care about 99% of it. I care about 1%. And that's what we need to focus on. What do you find is the most important data that you guys really hone in on?
When it comes to online sales, we're looking at cost of acquisition, right?
Okay.
The what's the effectiveness of each dollar that we're spending in digital advertising? What's the effectiveness of each dollar that we're spending above the line? We're finding in today's market space, obviously above the line is not as effectual as it used to be. Digital advertising is definitely effectual. So cost of acquisition is the primary focus point for us. Repeat sale in a certain time frame, and then the third metric that we care about is how much of that $450 are we capturing per annum from somebody. And like you said, I wholeheartedly agree. I mean, there are thousands of data points that you can get from the digital advertisement platforms on your own. And we actually do track all those. We run our own data warehouses where we manage and maintain that data. Having said that, the relevant information, the actionable information, as you said, is very, very small. I mean, there's so many pieces of data that, frankly, I'll be in meetings and I'll scratch my head and ask, like, what am I going to do with that? Like, who cares?
Mm.
Right? Like, it sounds really interesting, but it's not really that meaningful to me. So
Mm-mm.
actionable data is the thing that's the most important. Like when we do engagement at retailers, for example, the only metric we care about is how many hands could you have shook. Like you're not really in that handshaking mode, but you are creating a relational, emotional story with that person. Well, how many people did you tell that story to?
Mm-hmm.
Right? That's the sign of whether or not you're an efficient spend, right? Is that team efficiently spending our advertising money in effect? Are they actually spending that marketing money properly? So there's very, very few metrics that are ultimately meaningful to you. Conversion rates, wonderful. I can move conversion rates here and there, but we spend too much time trying to change a conversion rate from 2% to 2.2%. Like it's really ultimately not meaningful unless we're talking about a massively large audience. That's a waste of time, right? Work with the conversion rate that you have and figure out how to get more people into that conversion rate, right?
Yeah, get more people converting at that rate.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So it's a cost of acquisition for us. Some campaigns, I mean, they run high. Some campaigns can run into $200 acquisition cost, outrageous.
Mm-hmm.
We have other campaigns that run into $6 acquisition costs. Obviously, one's effective and one's not. If you look at the imagery and the call to action in those, there's not a lot of difference. So it's not a guess thing that we're able to do. We just have to take it to market and see. So our metric set is very small because that's all we can affect.
Mm-hmm.
None of the rest is actionable.
No. Let me ask you then about something that's more event focused, like a Formula One or Formula Drift partnership. How are you correlating the investment there into what is coming out of it?
That's so we do a 6-month lag,
Yeah.
and that's how we're actually correlating that from a numbers perspective. But those kinds of opportunities also create intrinsic value. Intrinsic value isn't quantifiable. For example, we use Formula One paddock passes, which it's a $20,000 pass. It is not something you can buy. You have to be a sponsor for one of the teams. We're part of the VCARB Red Bull team. Having said that, it makes for a great reward for somebody who's doing something amazing in the field who may or may not actually work directly for us. Come back to that referral notion. We're a referring entity. We're referring back to distributor reps and their sales teams. How do we incent them? Well, that's a way to do that. How do we ingratiate ourselves with those big, large buyers? There might be some relationship building that we're using Formula One for, that we're using Formula Drift for. We are looking at them in different ways. Some of our motorsports entrees are more for engagement and call to action. Formula Drift falls into that. We have other motorsports that we work with, MotoGP, etc. Formula One, to your original question, is really more about awareness.
Mm-hmm.
You're looking at 110 million viewers per race, 24 times a year. The TV time we get for our logo is about 6.5 minutes a weekend. We're getting a tremendous marketing value out of that from an awareness point of view. It's way better than the Super Bowl. It's way better than any other sporting or any other event save one. And that is the soccer tournament every 4 years. The only one that does better than Formula One is that. So, in terms of awareness, which is where we're focused on in Formula One, we take advantage of that. We take advantage of the Red Bull content, which is part of our relationship. We take advantage of our own content being created there. We take advantage of the time on TV that is afforded us through that relationship. But that's all just awareness, both short-term and long-range brand building for us. Where we take advantage of the other smarter sports spaces, as I said, was the engagement. We can actually touch real people. Think about the person that's going to Formula One at a paddock club. That person is generally not a consumer. They control an F&B. They control a retailer. They control those groups, but they're not actually consuming the product. So when we're talking about engagement and call to action, that's done in the motorsports areas like Formula Drift, where we can touch those people. We can do real world activations where the ticket price is in the $50 range, not the $20,000 range. People can actually go to this on a weekly basis. They can enjoy Formula Drift with their entire family, with their friends who are our consumers ultimately. So we differentiate what it is we're trying to achieve through those two different versions of motorsports. Does that make sense?
Yes. And I think that's an interesting thing for people to keep in mind as they're thinking about those types of experiential investments is you're going to see things, but it's also a place for you to say, hey, that retailer that is like on the fence, this might be our way to help get them off the fence and get them to start stocking us. And, that's going to pay the dividends. And I think that's one of the things that people, as they're launching brands or continuing to market brands, think about if you're only focused on your CAC, right, as we talked about, then you're only really thinking about what's my ROI on these things. And the ROI can be much more intrinsic as you think about the larger pieces. And it's those things that you should and almost need to be doing to help continue to tell the story of your brand and make it get to the places where you want it to be.
Well, what's the real measure of success? The measure of success when you're selling any commodity is, are your consumers buying it when you're not marketing?
Mm-hmm.
Are they buying it when you're not digitally advertising, when you're not creating calls to action? And while you're creating calls to action, this is what most young brands did. We did it. Everybody does it, I think, initially. Is you're fueling this cost of acquisition and you're continuing to build numbers, but it's costing you more and more. Even though your cost of acquisition might be going down, in absolute terms, you're spending more in that area. And when you turn it off, all of a sudden the sales stop.
Mm-hmm.
Because you've forgot to build long range awareness. Right? So you need the awareness in the market space, and that has no quantifiable ROI. There's no cost of acquisition associated with that. That is pure brand awareness that you cannot quantify. So back to my earlier statement, we measure that on a 6-month lag. So in a particular region, if we're creating awareness, what would be the benefit over a 6-month period? So we have to determine some kind of period for an ROI analysis that's not immediate. The other thing that we made mistakes in, if you will, if you'll allow me there, is we used to go to a lot of events, parties, and places like this. And what you realize is you spend a lot of money sponsoring somebody else's connection to their community.
Mm-hmm.
Not your connection. Because those patrons, those community members, when they left that event, they went home and never thought about you again.
Mm-hmm.
And all you did was provide an elevated experience for that owner of that community. And you probably paid to be a part of that. NEFT doesn't do that anymore. NEFT actually throws its own experiences. We have a festival series called Worlds Away that we actually promote and run. We run in small groups, usually 8 to 10,000 people at a time, where 100% of the vodka that's available to you is ours, where every moment of your experience is NEFT related, where the entire experience is what we call a 100% adoption. In other words, when I'm sponsoring somebody else's community event, I'm usually getting a 4 or 5% adoption. I might be in the corner. I might have a really elegant space, but it's still in the corner.
Mm-hmm.
Still sequestered off to the edge, if you will. But when we're sponsoring our own, we're getting a 100% adoption. Much, much more efficient spend. There's a memory that occurs in the patrons when they go home the next day. And that brings us back to the online sales. We need to have immediate gratification for those folks that experienced us and can then present value back to them through that immediate gratification. Generally, that's online sales. So the retailers are helpful, but online sales gives me that moment where I can, while at the festival, I can order a few barrels. So both those channels are incredibly important, but we have to remember where we're going to see value at what time in the sales cycle. When somebody's seen us somewhere, the retailers make a great move. When somebody's experienced us somewhere, online is the best product movement channel. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. So you tell at the beginning, you're talking about the impact of the how many hands did you shake? How many people did you tell our story to? How many people did you connect with? How many did you get an emotional response from? How do you think about keeping that up as you continue to expand? Because once you get into retailers, and I've seen this happen a lot with CPG, is okay, we finally got into this retailer, Total Wine, whatever it is, Bevmo. And then it's like, okay, we got into them. Now who's the next one? Where the ones that I see succeed say, okay, we're going to focus on this one. We got in it. But now how do we continue to maximize that? And how do you think about that as you continue to expand? Because you get pulled in so many directions.
Yeah, that's the discipline of being an entrepreneur, right? Is I think young entrepreneurs tend to sort of shotgun, if you will, they're
Mm-hmm.
opportunistic, right? They're taking advantage of anything that comes their way. Wow, so and so just paid interest to us. Let's go in that direction. The difference with a seasoned professional suite is strategy. And strategy requires you to say no, requires you to back away from opportunities that are arising and instead focus on those places where you can do a great job. So don't get so thin that you do a mediocre job everywhere. Stay in the few places where you can do a great job. Refocus your efforts and make sure that those beachheads are successful. Once they're saturated, stable, then move on to the next one. It doesn't behoove you to spread your resources so thin that you're doing a mediocre job everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone will eventually quit you. So do a great job where you're at. Pay attention, focus, understand what they're looking for. Frankly, every retail, there isn't a formula. They all have a different formula. They all approach
Mm-hmm.
it differently. And so you need to learn, how do they approach it? What do they care about? What do they value? And help them create that value. Give that value away. It always comes back. It doesn't come back immediately, but it does come back. Give them that value, whatever it is that they need for success. They'll remember you and they'll move your product. And then as you are simultaneously bringing people into their locations through your campaigns, then you have this sort of top down and bottom up approach that makes for the winning combination. You can't do that when you're spread too thin. You'll just do a mediocre job everywhere.
Well, and what I've noticed, having been in CPG, having been in mass retail, is when you do make that emotional connection and you come back and then you see that I was on a higher shelf, now I'm on a better, like, eye level shelf, and you like connect with them and they're like, oh yeah, we remember you guys came in, you told us your story, and that's why we wanted to help sell you better, right? Like, you're not going to see it in every store, but you'll see it in the stores where you had an impact. And I feel like those are the moments for me that it was always like, oh, okay, cool. Like, I'm resonating with somebody that's leaving an impression on them, and they're going out of their way to help me sell more of my thing, which is like such a cool thing that I think we forget about as you expand as wide as you do.
Well, everybody wants to be an influencer. And I don't mean it in the broad sense. I mean, we all influence one or two people in our life. We all
Mm-hmm.
influence three or four. We're not all online. We're not all in Instagram or wherever the medium is, but we are all influencers and we all enjoy that moment when we convert somebody. You
Mm-hmm.
can't convert anybody without a story, right? There's an emotional connection. If you give people that story, they'll go and be your super fan, right? You've treated them well, you've created value for them, and you gave them a story that they can tell on your behalf. Now you have a super fan. Super fans will move you from the top shelf or the bottom shelf to eye level. They'll actually do that for you.
Mm-hmm.
But you have to continue to give to them small things. Like we've noticed one time that somebody was complaining about their back. He had hurt himself months and months earlier, and he was just in passing saying, it sort of hurts when I have to move some of these boxes around. Sometimes I have to do it because we're a small shop, and our team brought in um, back braces for them. Okay, something small, something
Mm-hmm.
meaningless, but they remembered that, right? And it cost us what, $150 for a back
Mm-hmm.
brace. We gave that to these folks. We didn't brand them. We didn't do anything like that. It was just about them. Said, hey, hope you're feeling better. We'll see you in a week or so when we come back in. Wonderful. Value. Those are the small things that help. Now they're telling our story.
Mm-hmm.
They're coming back around and they're saying, how would you like me to tell this story? And we're saying, this is how we would like for you to tell this story. Or we're saying something like, wow, you're telling a story so amazingly already. Wouldn't change a thing. Thanks, Jim or Jane or whoever we're talking to.
Yep.
It's emotional connection with everybody.
Yeah. Yeah. They talk about that a lot in like 3-star Michelin restaurants. Like, how do you make that moment where you can connect and really like surprise and delight people? So, like, to your point, right? Like, you're listening, you're hearing them, and you're saying, oh, we hear you. Let's get you a back brace. Like, not for any other reason than like we are connected and we connect with you. And they're not going to forget that, right? Every time they put it on, they go, oh, yeah, it was the Little Barrel guys. They're the ones who gave me this. Like, and I think that's so cool. Let me pivot and ask you about marketing, advertising, doing all that on ecom, because I've heard and we've had other guests talk about TikTok. TikTok's really tough when it comes to alcohol. Other platforms are a little bit looser, but like, how do you navigate through all of that knowing it's so finicky when you try to advertise online?
It is. I think it's part of the A/B testing. What doesn't make it through the filters, as it were, right?
Mm-hmm.
And these folks at TikTok are saying, "Yeah, we're not letting that happen." You pivot. There's no arguing, right? They control that platform, so you determine what actually works there. There are so many channels in so many ways, but the core of this, to twist the question a little bit, is we don't have a big enough community of our own, and no startup brands really do. And if
Mm-hmm.
you think about even the Grey Gooses of the world, you're talking about maybe 200,000 or 300,000 people in their little community. You can't build a
Mm-hmm.
business around that, right? It's not big enough. Community building is sort of something that is always the preeminent focus, and that's done through digital advertising in those mediums like Instagram and TikTok. Having said that, you don't have a big enough community. So you have to
Mm-hmm.
leverage other people's communities. How would you do that? Influencers. Okay. The influencers that you can afford at startup phase aren't going to actually move the needle. In fact, we're bringing influencers. We experimented for a quick second. We were bringing influencers to our Formula One races just for a
Mm-hmm.
quick minute. And we realized really quickly that we were putting them in an environment that they could never be in.
Mm-hmm.
And their value back to us was so minimal in return. All we did was foster their community.
Yeah. Boost their
We
engagement
could
with
boost their
themselves.
engagement, we could boost their, it didn't help us. It didn't really move the needle. And so you look at the ultra premium sort of influencers, you can't afford them,
Mm-hmm.
right? They don't move the needle that much anyway. Typically they're taking a piece of the stock. There's no success metrics, and they most of the time just take stock and run away and do
Mm-hmm.
nothing with it. So then there's that sort of middle ground, right? This is the affiliate marketing. Those people get paid just for marketing in their own channel. You didn't bring them to a new environment. They're not actually creating necessarily content that you help them create. They're doing this on their own. They're fostering their own community, but they're bringing you along for the ride for a little share of the action. But that share of the action is paid in arrears. It's paid for success.
Mm-hmm.
That is the model that you should be working with, right? That's hard pressed to learn. Having said that, now all of a sudden you're looking at lots of smaller communities aggregated together. Now we're seeing millions and millions of people view our advertisement, even though we don't actually control that community. It's not ours. But we're helping other people tell an interesting story, and they get paid for telling that story successfully. And so that's our approach in the digital medium format. Having a call to action, that call to action can be traced. We can tell that affiliate marketer specifically how much they sold at our online retail store.
Mm-hmm.
Here's how much you're getting paid for doing that. Thank you very much. You can now start to gather the statistics and see who's doing well, who's not doing well. You can also begin to gamify this.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So we're just at the beginning of starting to gamify that. So we're excited in the opportunity to gamify that. What that means is now extending dashboards to these affiliate marketers, running our own programs to say, here's how you're standing in a leaderboard. Here's how much some of your contemporaries are making. Here's what you could be making.
Mm-hmm.
So you're starting a new pathway where you don't just have super fans who do things for you for free, but you have super fans who are making a return, and now they're more invested. But that sort of brings us up to our Raise It Up Foundation. So we have a foundation called Raise It Up, who is all about emerging talent. So we help filmmakers in Ethiopia. We help female wannabe Formula One drivers. We help out of work female bartenders. Our focus is children and women. We help with pediatric cancer. During COVID, we sponsored a number of out of work female bartenders who were mothers. And
Cool.
just paid their monthly salary as if they would have gotten it. When COVID broke, they went back to work. They remembered us, but we take it very seriously there. So we use that also in our digital campaigns. Here's how we're helping other people. Help us help them. And
Mm-hmm.
so awareness starts to grow about, did you know that NEFT does a literacy program? Did you know that NEFT is helping young artists in all talent areas? Did you know that NEFT is doing these things? And all of a sudden we have a pathway into other communities, and they genuinely want to help us. And in return, we become a collective community. And it's really interesting how that parlays into sales that we didn't ask for. We're not doing this marketing when we're helping emerging talent with the NEFT moniker attached to it. It's called Raise It Up. It doesn't even say NEFT in it.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And it's about truly adding value back into society. It gets noticed, but it's long range brand building, and you have to be willing to understand the ROI versus intrinsic value. And so our digital campaigns, to come full circle on your question, are really multi-pronged. How do we actually help people for real? How do we create super fans and get them paid? And how do we actually do our own digital advertisements that are targeted using, we have our media team's TV quality production. So
Mm-hmm.
we have high quality things. Then you have to add that user generated content. Huge, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we don't try to make our content look user generated like I see a lot of firms doing.
Yep.
We try to, you can see this is the professional from Net, and this is the user generated. This is the real stuff. And so you get a sense of authenticity from Net. Like, they're not trying to fool us. These
Mm-hmm.
user generated pieces are actually user generated.
Yeah. It's UCG. It's not
Yeah,
us making UCG. Yeah.
exactly. We're about authenticity. We hope that that's reflected in our advertising. I think people are savvy enough to see through it when you're not,
Mm-hmm.
right? They are. And there's so many choices out there that as soon as they get any inkling of a bad vibe from you, they just move on.
It's what the kids always call cringe. Everyone. I always hear it all the time. Like, oh, that brand's being really cringe. I'm like, oh, yeah, that's. I
Exactly.
don't want anything to do with that then.
Right. So we're acting our age, as it were. We're wearing age appropriate clothes.
Mm-hmm.
We're not trying to be cringe. Yes, we want to talk to our demographic. Our demographic is made up of young people. It's made up of older people. Our demographic follows with Formula One. So to piggyback on my earlier answer with Formula One, our demographic overlaps almost directly with Formula One, and that's a very large range from 25 to 65, male and female. About 60% to 70% male. The rest is female, but it's a huge population of female. So we're not going to pretend. So when we talk to the motorsports space, we're actually motorsports people. I build my own trucks. Our team rides motorcycles. Our team knows how to speak the lingo because we've been doing it for 40 years, right?
Mm-hmm.
We don't know the music space super well. So we created our own festival so that we can say, yeah, we do. We've been
Mm-hmm.
through it with you. We know how hard it is to stand up a festival. We know these things. We want to move into fashion, which we don't know much about at all. So we're not pretending to. We're just backing certain fashion players in emerging markets. And we're saying, hey, one day we'll be a part of that group. We're not today. So we're not going to fake it. We're not going to try and ingratiate or integrate. That is where you get cringy, right?
Mm-hmm.
But we
Mm-hmm.
know motorsports. We are motorsports. Our barrel is motorsports. The name NEFT means oil in Cyrillic, right?
Mm-hmm.
There are like 57 languages that name means oil. So we play in spaces where we can be authentic. And that's our digital advertising as well, is authenticity.
Yeah. Jeff, this has been delightful. It's been great to kind of understand how you balance DTC growth with retail expansion. I think it's super valuable for anyone who's trying to figure that out on how they can follow in your footsteps and kind of appreciate what you guys have learned, what you've said. A few of these things where you're like, I wish we wouldn't have done that, but we learned and now we don't do that. But I want to hit you with some rapid fire questions really quickly if you're open to it.
Absolutely.
We'll start with my James Bond question, which is: should the martini be shaken or stirred?
Nope, stirred. If you're shaking vodka, you're stratifying it. You're changing the taste profile.
In the coldest glass possible. Right?
In the coldest glass possible. In fact, last evening we were at a pediatric cancer event. We had ice glasses made from ice,
Like ice.
like actually formed from ice.
What do you think is the most underrated vodka cocktail that you think deserves more attention?
Well, I'm a purist, so I'm going to go with Vodka Rocks.
Vodka.
I mean, really, and this is where NEFT comes in, and it was part of our value proposition was a sipping alcohol. All other spirits categories have some sipping version, except vodka,
Mm-hmm.
right? But most of the world actually enjoys vodka neat and warm. So that's not going to fly in some of the societies that we work in, but a chilled version of that where you actually have a taste profile. And the interesting thing about NEFT is NEFT has a sort of a DNA thing. Some people will taste the lemongrass finish and other people will taste the slightly cinnamon finish.
Oh, interesting.
So it's very interesting. It's a wonderful taste profile that is born from two ingredients and really nothing more. We put nothing in it. So for me, on the rocks.
It's funny you say that because my uncle studied in Russia, and he's the only person, whenever I sit down with him, he always just like pulls out a bottle of vodka and he's like, we're drinking this. I'm like, we don't, nothing else. And he's like, this is it. I just pulled it out of the freezer. This is what we're having.
That's it.
And I feel like in places it's become a thing, but you mentioned it. And now I'm like, oh no, I would never think about doing that with vodka. But you think about it with almost every other spirit, which is so fascinating.
Yes. And the reason is because vodka has been so terrible.
Mm-hmm. That it's had to be.
You had to mix it. You got to dilute this somehow, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
and the reason is because vodka comes with a bite
Mm-hmm.
that all vodka brands except for NEFT will cure or try to with additives. So a really interesting fact is 50 milliliters of a 750 in the United States and most other countries can be virtually anything. So glycerin, fructose, and all these things get added to cut that bite. Those also create the hangover.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Drinking something that's purely water and rye, that's done in a batch process, that's finished properly so that you actually have a smooth taste instead of that bite. And all of a sudden now you have a whole different experience. And that's something that you're going to want to enjoy on the rocks. Now, me personally, when I'm with a lot of my family, it's straight up warm. Pull it off the shelf.
Warm.
Yeah. Now, with NEFT, you can drink about 3 times as much before the hangover starts to hit you. You're going to be tired, but you're not going to have that sugar-related hangover that you have in all other vodkas. So on the rocks.
Awesome. What do you think is the worst vodka trend you've seen lately?
I think it's the gimmicks. You see these. We were in danger of that, right? We have this unique barrel. That barrel was purposeful for us, though. It's 1/3 the weight of glass, so its carbon footprint is much smaller on our planet.
Mm-hmm.
It stays cold for 4 to 6 hours, depending on the environment that you're in once you chill it. It's unbreakable. So we had some real purpose behind it. Having said that, it could be considered a gimmick in some circles, right? And so you look at the vodka bottles out there that we see, and I won't name them, but there are plenty that are a really interesting bottle. And they're
I'm
wonderful.
like imagining all the ones that I can think of.
There's a ton of them. Let's just put it that
Yes.
way. You only need one of those on your shelf to have an interesting conversation. But if the juice inside isn't good, you're not buying a second one. So we needed to stay away from the gimmicks. So your answer is that you find a lot of horrible products, vodka included, of course, in these wonderful containers, and they go nowhere.
What do you think is the best pairing for vodka that people don't think about?
Well, everybody's going to think about caviar, I assume. So, what's really interesting is a good rye bread or apples. So,
Apples.
yeah, apples. What you'll find when you travel the Eastern European countries, you'll find a lot of folks with a slice of apple. They're eating the apple separately. They're not actually putting it in the vodka. Sip of vodka, bite of apple. It's a very interesting pairing, and
Yeah.
it works really, really well from a taste perspective. A good rye bread. America isn't really filled with dark bread. America is more of a
No.
light bread community, but the rest of the world, particularly in Europe, they like their dark breads. Right?
Dark, heavy breads.
Dark, heavy
Yeah.
breads. What a wonderful combination for a good vodka. So caviar, of course, top of the list. Caviar might be a little pricey for some folks. Good rye bread or an apple, wonderful pairing.
I'm going to have to try that. All right. And then last rapid fire question here is if you could only drink one classic vodka cocktail, what would it be?
It would be a slightly dirty martini.
Slightly dirty martini.
Slightly
Perfect.
dirty.
With a very cold glass.
Very cold glass, of course, filled to the top. We all know, if you haven't figured it out yet, a martini glass is really interesting. You leave a quarter or half an inch empty, that's a whole nother drink.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's always funny when you think about it. When the taller you get up, the more it fits. And you're like, well, that's so much space. It's actually more space than like the bottom third of this glass.
Yeah, a martini glass is the best glass to enjoy vodka in. You get so much more if they're filling it. Slightly dirty, vermouth in the glass, spill the vermouth, throw the vodka in, chilled, serve.
Beautiful. Jeff, how do we find you and NEFT out in the world?
Well, obviously our online websites are available. We are in almost all online communities. If you're in London or England, you're going to find us in the Amazon there. You're going to find us in Bottle Club. You're going to find us at our own controlled retailers. Of course, you're going to see us at Bevmo and Total Wine and all the major retailers that you would expect to see us, Rouse, Safeway, etc. We want to be accessible. Most likely you're going to find us in your small liquor stores that are around you, but certainly at your major retailers.
Beautiful. Jeff, I love this conversation. I've had a great time. I really appreciate you joining and sharing these insights. I think they're amazing, especially to see like where you guys have gotten to and the things you guys have learned across the way. If you found this conversation useful, subscribe wherever you listen. If you know someone who'd find this interesting, share it with them, maybe over some NEFT and a piece of rye bread or some apple, which I think is fascinating still. And with that, I've been Rami Jubran. Thank you for listening to The Business of Online Alcohol.